Well, the choir is finding their seat. Please do this. Just stand up and say good morning to each other. Give that encouraging word that people need to hear, please. I meant to note earlier, George and Judy Fishwick made it here this morning. Glad to see you here. So, and don't clap for yourself, George. George and Judy are making plans to be moving up to Minnesota in just a couple weeks. Is that right? Is that still okay? Everything's still in motion there. I want you to know we're going to miss you guys. We hope the very best for you as you head up to Minnesota. And next January, when it's real cold, we'll be thinking about you. Okay, so we'll be praying for extra warmth for you.
The Bombs, dust storms,
Oh.
or the 114 week.
Yeah, I'll let that go. I was gonna mention March, April, May, but we'll just let that. Jorge Rodriguez was the meanest, orneriest bandit on the Texas-Mexico border. He lived down in Mexico, and he'd cross over the Rio Grande and rob American banks. And then he'd flee back across the river down into Mexico where he could be safe, and they could never catch him. All the banks got together, and they finally went out and hired this well-known Texas Ranger. He could track down anybody, and it was a good thing. They hired him and his band of men, and the next bank robbery, that ranger got on the trail, tracked Jorge all the way down into Mexico, found him in a cantina, and they burst into the cantina with their guns ready to blaze and trapped him. And the big Texas Ranger came right up to Jorge and said, "You are trapped. There's no way out of here. We got you. Now, tell me where you've hid all that money. We know you've got over $1 million down here. Tell us right now where the money is." And they'd overlooked part of their plan. Jorge didn't speak a word of English. The Texas Rangers didn't speak a word of Spanish. So they had quite a barrier here, quite an impasse. And then finally someone came forward, a little Mexican man, and came over and said, "Jorge does not speak English and you don't speak Spanish. I will interpret. I know both languages." And the Texas Ranger said, "Oh, thank you. Okay, tell Jorge what I just tried to explain to him." And the man went and talked to Jorge and said, "They've got you, brother. They've got you surrounded. There's no way out of this. They want you to tell them where you hid the money, and then they'll be lenient with you." And Jorge said, "I see, they got me. Okay, tell them this. Tell the ranger there that he goes to the south side of this town. There's a fountain. Go to the point, take 4 steps southward, and he'll find a stone there that's loose. Pull up that stone. He'll find all the money there. There's over $1 million underneath that stone." And the man said, "Jorge, you've done the right thing." Then he went over back to the ranger, and while he's walking back to the ranger, it dawned on him, he now knows where the money is. And so he thought that over, and he came to the Texas Ranger, and he said this, "Here's what Jorge has to say. Go ahead, you big-mouthed gringo. Go ahead and shoot, because I'm not telling you where the money is." Now, those different barriers of language and so forth can sometimes really be a curse to us and get in the way. And Jesus found one of those barriers himself. But it's marvelous the way he responded to it. He didn't let it remain a barrier. He didn't let it block him on how he's reaching out to all people. After all, it's Jesus who gives the Great Commission that this gospel message goes to Judea, it goes to Samaria, Galilee, and all the parts of the earth. He's taken a step ahead of time on how that commission will be worked out. The story we find of Jesus meeting this woman at the well is found in the Gospel of John in chapter 4. You can follow along. It'll be on the slides on the wall, and it's also going to be in your bulletin if you'd like to follow along there. Now, he had to go through Samaria. This is Jesus. And so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar. And near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. And it was about noon. And when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" And his disciples had gone into the town to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." And Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" And Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." And may God add His Spirit to the reading of this word, that it takes on a fresh life to us this morning, helps us to see a little more clearly how Jesus might have conversation with us as well. Well, Jesus and his disciples are traveling throughout the Palestine area. They've been in Jerusalem and Judea. They headed back up to Galilee. And they've got to pass through this territory of Samaria. It seems like a terrible geographic joke on the Israelites that there's Judea that's all Jewish, there's Galilee up north is all Jewish, and in between the two are these Samaritans. Now, they've had trouble with the Samaritans for at least 4 centuries now. They have not got along. The Samaritans are those that centuries back were taken into exile. And those Samaritans married Gentiles. And the people that were left in the land, left behind, they married the Gentiles that came in to settle into those areas. So their lineage was impure. They were not pure Jews. And the two split. And they went in different directions. And over the years, the animosity just grew. I like one story about Samaritans got together and they put human bones underneath their robes, made their way to Jerusalem, got into the temple right before Passover. Now, Passover is the greatest holiday that the Jews celebrate. It's like Christmas for us. And when they got to the temple, they took the human bones out, threw them into the temple, defiled the temple. They had to essentially cancel Passover. That'd be like somebody coming here if the Canadians came down and canceled Christmas on us. How would you feel about that? I would have a problem, I think. I might get over it okay, but it could cause problems. They did things like that year after year, and the two groups never got along. It's kind of like Republicans and Democrats. Let me leave that imagery somewhere else, okay? Just get that out of your head, I'm sorry. But it runs deep how they are not going to get along. And Jesus travels through Samaria and passes by Sychar and winds up there at this well. And this well is about a half a mile outside of Sychar. It's not really close to anything. Something of a tourist site. This is Jacob's well. The idea is that Joseph has been buried somewhere right in this vicinity. There's things of a spiritual pilgrimage, if you will, things to take in. But Jesus stops. He rests. He's thirsty. He sends his disciples on ahead to get some food, and there he is by himself. And who do you suppose comes out to get some water? But a woman comes out. And it's not just a woman, it's a Samaritan woman. All that animosity comes out in the reader's mind. But for Jesus, this is not an issue. When the woman comes down by the well, and Jesus is the one that talks to her right away. He says, "Hey, I'm kind of thirsty. Will you get me something to drink?" Interesting thing to say. Now, notice who has the problem with the racial differences here. It's the woman herself. Says, now you do understand, right? You're a man, you're a Jewish man. I'm a woman, I'm a Samaritan woman. You're not supposed to ask me for these kind of things. You're supposed to throw caustic things at me, and we're supposed to argue right now. Her response is a little testy. It's almost like she is ready for an argument, ready to go at it with this matter. But Jesus doesn't do that. That's not his thing. That's not the way he responds. He does not register these differences. This is the great lesson for Christian people. We don't see those differences that other people see. We don't see a difference between men and women, Jews, Samaritans, or whatever the nationality may be. The point is moot. It means nothing to us. We are all together. We are one, following our Lord Jesus, who models this better than anyone. And it's also interesting, you notice the little time marker that John puts in his gospel. It was about noon. Now to us, 20 centuries later, it's easy to overread that, isn't it? We'd miss it. But a first century Palestinian, that would raise some questions. Why is this woman coming to get water at noon? The normal thing you do is you stay in the village of Sychar, which is Jacob's Well is a half mile away, remember? It's not close at all. In the village of Sychar, there's a well that's running water. It's good. You go there, it's easy to scoop it out. It's typical, what you expect. The women of the community come out early in the morning. They meet at the well. They get the water for the day. While they're there, there's no newspapers. That's your source of news right there. Salome might report that her son Benjamin has got eyes toward Mary, and there may be a wedding coming up. We'll see. They pass the news back and forth there. They build their friendship. They build their fellowship, almost like Donut Sunday here. We have donuts. We talk to each other. We share words for each other, and we enjoy each other's company. Why isn't this woman doing that? Why isn't she getting her water in the morning like the other women do? Why is she getting her water way out here at Jacob's Well, where it's hard to get water? You need a long rope. The well is so deep, as she points out. There's a question there. Something's wrong with her history. Those in the first century reading this story, their eyebrows go up at this point. What's the rest of the story of this woman? But when Jesus talks with this woman, none of those things matter. None of those things have any bearing whatsoever. In fact, we read the story closely. Jesus is almost playfully talking with her, almost as though there would be a smile on his face as he says this. You know, if you really knew who I was, you would ask me for something else, and I would give you living water. And that's a playful way to get something across there, to get her interest, to continue this meaningful conversation. Well, I tried to think of what a good similar thing today would be, and I pictured myself stopping at Circle K to get some gas and fueling my car. Someone pulls up in the next stall and gets out, a nice-looking guy, business type, starts putting gas in his car, and we're both there waiting. This is my posture, pumping gas in the car. Is it done yet? And he would call to me and said, hey, you know what? I got a secret. I know where you can get gasoline that when you put it in your car one time, you'll never have to get gas again. It'll always be full. Now, if he would say that with the wild eyes shooting every which way, I'd probably just finish filling my car and drive away as quickly as I could. But if it's a level-headed guy, got a straight look on things, I'd be interested. One, let's not rule out the possibility. I'd be really interested if there was such an invention. There may be a punchline to this. I'd want to talk more to find out what the punchline might be. But he's got my interest. Let's talk. I think that's what happened with this woman here. Let's talk, shall we? Now, it's interesting. Her response is, where can you get this living water? Did you catch that? It's not so much where can I get it, but where can you get your water that you're so fascinated with? And then right away she goes into the religious things. Are you greater than our father Jacob? Talking about the heritage again. We're not half-breeds to the Jews. We have a pure lineage in ourselves, and on and on. And when Jesus answers her, he doesn't even answer that point. he gets back to the question again that he posed. Everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again. It's not going to last. But I can tell you about water that will fill you, water that will fill your soul completely. And you'll never be able to find water like that anywhere else on this planet. Do you see what Jesus is getting at? She's getting at these religious points. I go to church. I pray on the right mountain. I do all these things. But Jesus is concerned about the deeper question of her soul. What's really going on in here, woman? That's what you need to deal with. That's what you need to pay attention to. Well, Jesus is playfully conversing with her in these things, and she's responding back to her. In the original language, it's very amusing the way it works. John's got it in one verse, he says something, the next verse, she says something, the next verse, he says something, then it's she says something. And reading that, I feel like I'm at a ping pong tournament. It's just he says, she says, he says, she says. There's a bit of a comical note in there. But finally, Jesus gets to the point, and he told her, go, call your husband and come back. On the one side, it might be, I would like to talk to both of you about marriage and satisfaction of life. But he's after something a little bit deeper. Verse 17, the woman says, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her, you're right. When you say that you have no husband, you're correct. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. Now, today in our society, divorce, remarriage, this happens. It's important that we embrace those that go through the struggle of this process. It's very hard. But in first century Palestine, getting divorced once is very hard. Getting remarried is very difficult. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. To do it twice, to do it 3 times, to do it 5 times, goodness, she would have been an outcast. That does explain something about her getting water somewhere else. Going outside a Sychar, going outside the normal time when it would happen. But Jesus never says this to condemn her. Jesus says that to get to the heart of the issue. He says, woman, there's something restless inside of you. There's something missing inside of you. And she knows it. But there's no condemnation here. Jesus never has a word of judgment for her. Jesus is merely stating fact, merely getting onto the plane where we can get into the healing side of it. We can get into the truth of it, not pretending, not covering up, not discarding, not putting it under the rug or in the closet, but just being out in the open and being honest with one another. Well, the woman once again tries to change the subject into religious things. In verse 20, our ancestors worshipped on this mountain. See what she's getting at? Here's the way that always worked in our ritual, what we're used to. We'd pray on this mountain, and you Jews would pray on the mountain down where Jerusalem is, down south of us. But Jesus does not answer that. He doesn't say which mountain is the better mountain to pray on. That's not the point at all. Verse 21, woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain here in Samaria nor in Jerusalem. That's not even the point. You will worship God in 2 particular ways. The first way that we will worship God is in spirit. The second way we will worship God is in truth. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. It's a central truth in all of us, that we have that spiritual side which sometimes defies our logic, sometimes defies our knowledge of things. It's that part beyond us, that transcendent part that we know is true. In communion we experience, in praising God we experience, in prayer we experience it. During our service where we greet each other and give encouraging words, we're sensing it there. That spiritual side of us that brings out so more. It's more than just hitting the note right or hitting it wrong, but it's just singing with praise and love in our heart. Jesus says a time is coming when you worship that way. And the time is coming you'll worship a second way. It's truth. No disguises, no pretending, no projection of how you want people to see you, no boasting of yourself, but just to be honest, to come before God and to pray with that kind of courage to say, Lord, been a tough week. I've had a hard time. I'm not sure about the decisions I need to make. Sometimes I'm doubting whether or not you're in this picture or not. And that's okay to have that kind of honesty with God, to engage in the conversation and to be real. I believe Judy Bauer modeled this so well for me this past week, that truth side of it, that spirit side of it. To say when she goes through her chemotherapy that there's going to be Sundays she's so tired, but she's going to drop whatever strength she's got to get here. Because this is the place she can come. And she can admit it. It is hard. I do feel sick. I am tired. But this is the place I can come, and people will support me. And they will not judge me for being ill. They will not judge me for being tired and weak. But they will accept me. And they will bring me in. And they will encourage me. That's the worship that comes in spirit. That's the worship that comes in truth. That's the kind of worship that comes through Jesus Christ. When Jesus tells the woman this, she responds in verse 25, a little later in this chapter. The woman said, I know that the Messiah is coming, and when he comes, he'll explain all of this to us. He will make all of this so very clear. And then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Jesus reveals his identity to this woman. Note, he's not revealed this identity to his disciples yet. They suspect it, they're wondering it, but it's to this woman, this Samaritan woman, the woman with a questionable past. This is the woman Jesus strikes up a great familiarity with, this great intimacy of friendship with her, to reveal to her that he's the Messiah. He's the one. And knowing Jesus, we find our worship to be in spirit, to be in truth. We find that inner part of us gaining its strength, gaining its power, gaining that awareness of God with us. Jesus brings that. The Messiah brings new life that we can find nowhere else. We drink the water that he brings us. We don't thirst again. We find that filling in our soul and our spirit. Other things in this world let us down, but Jesus never will. It's this life that our Lord calls us to.